So let's cover off the remaining sections of the documentation, including Web3, files, tools, and plugins. In the Web3 section, we can look at the Web3 provider and Ganache and the hard hat setup. Let's talk about Web3 integration first of all. Now, in your browser, there are a couple of ways that you can integrate Web3. You'll be able to use the Moralis enable Web3 method to get a fully functional Web3 instance, and that will enable you to make contract calls, such as this example here. You can also use the wallet connect provider. You'll just need to pass through this object in the method call. You would just need to make sure that you have wallet connect installed in your application. If you only needed to access some Web3 utilities, for example, this from way method, then you would be able to access it using this. But if you do it this way, you'll just need to understand that some of the other methods will not work, and you'd need to reassign the Web3 variable with the enable Web3 method later. We've already looked at how you can get a Web3 instance in Cloud Functions. Moralis offers you an execute function method, which will enable you to run smart contract functions, either call or send smart contract methods. There's an example here. You can pass across the contract address, the ABI, the function name, parameters, and a value if needed, and that would be in way. This example has 3 parts. The first one is the ABI, stored inside of an ABI variable. It then creates an options object with those options here, and then the options object is passed into the execute function method. Before you can run this method, you'll need to make sure that you have an enabled Web3 provider, following the instructions above. If you're using Wallet Connect, you'll have access to using the callbacks promises events section, which is a little bit further down in this page of the documentation. And below, you'll find an example of calling a send contract method, such as a standard smart contract method like approve. Or another example below that, which is the swap native for token smart contract method. And there's an example of that here. The options can be reusable. So if you need to use the options object for calling multiple contract methods, then you can do that. Here's an example of how you would write it. And this was the callbacks, promises, and events section I mentioned a moment ago. And this explains that the Moralis execute function method supports promise events, and you can hook into the different stages of your blockchain interaction, such as the transaction hash and the receipt and the confirmation stages, without having to wait for the entire transaction to process. So that's the execute function method. Moralis also lets you hook into Web3 change events. So for example, whenever you change an account in MetaMask, for example, if you're swapping from one account to another, it could do something. If you're changing the chain, then it would do something. Or if you're connecting or disconnecting from MetaMask or from your Web3 wallet provider, then it will allow you to do something. So one example might be on the accounts change, maybe you want to link or add the function to that user's account. Maybe they've got a few accounts they want to be associated with. When they change the account, you could offer them an option to link the account to their profile. And that comes down to this next section, linking. Moralis gives you access to link and unlink methods. If, for example, that method runs on the accounts changed, the function has access to the accounts of the user, and that's typically in the form of an Ethereum address. So when you run the link method, you would be able to add that Ethereum address to that particular user's accounts. And there's an example of how you might do that. Unlinking is the opposite. You could use the signing message option and choose a custom message that the user sees when linking an address. And then we've got some other handy functions and other handy methods that you can use. For example, ensure Web3 is installed. It returns a true or a false, and it just simply detects if a Web3 provider is activated. You would run the Moralis ensure Web3 is installed method, and then you would be able to check the result of that. You have another one, which is MetaMask installed? Also returns true or false, does what it says. You run the Moralis is MetaMask installed method, and then you can check the result. The next one, get chain ID, will return an integer value of the chain that your user is currently logged into. You can easily Google a list of those. We've covered this before, but you could use chainlist.org. So for example, 56 was in the documentation there, and we can tell that from experience, that's going to be Binance Smart Chain. You have access to the switch network method. You'll need to pass it a chain ID, but you would be able to programmatically change from one chain to another. It will require a signature. And final one is add network. You need to pass it a number of options, and this will have the ability to add a new network to the wallet. So as you'll agree, lots of very useful functions available for you straight out of the box.